Hey guys, this is a quick tutorial on how I make my homemade tortillas. They are a bit time consuming, so I don't make them frequently, but when I do, they are amazing. So if you want to see how I make them, keep on watching. Okay, so here we are starting off. As you can see, I have already kind of prepared my flour on the counter. I'm using the White Wings flour, all-purpose flour. You can use any kind of all-purpose flour. I'm just using this. You need 3 cups of the flour. So I already dumped my 3 cups of flour onto the counter. Then you want to take some baking powder. It can be any brand again. And you want to put 2 teaspoons of baking powder onto the flour. And so prior to this, I have already cleaned my surface area, so it's good to go. Also, my hands are cleaned as well because in a bit I will be using my hands. I find it much easier to do stuff with my hands. The next thing you want to add is salt. I used pink Himalayan salt, but any salt works. I used 2 teaspoons of salt as well. Okay, so now you want to mix up all the dry ingredients. So I'm incorporating it really well. You want to make sure everything's incorporated really well. And I started doing this with the spoon, but I work better with my hands. So I'm going to incorporate everything with my hands so that it's nice and mixed before I move on to my next thing that I'm going to be putting on there. So the next thing that I will be adding is, you can see right next to me, is the lard. Now I'm using vegetable lard. You can use any type of lard, like pork lard. I know some people use pork lard. I'm just using this basic lard. It works. So I did 2 scoops of 1/4 cups lard. So I used to do this with a spoon, like scoop it out, but then it got stuck on my spoon. So I found it best to scoop it out with my fingers so I get the most out of it. And I found it way better than using the spoon to scoop it out. Plus, after I'm finished scooping it out, we will have to mix the lard and the flour together. And I like using my hands for this because I can feel the texture of the flour and the lard being mixed together, so you know a little bit more of, when it's ready for the next step. So put those ingredients aside, and I use my fingers. Not the best part because it gets all over your fingers, but it's the most effective way because you can really feel the texture and you kind of know when it's ready. You want it to feel kind of like crumbly once you mixed everything together. So it'll feel a little bit crumbly once you mixed everything together. Mix the lard with the flour. So you just keep doing this. Okay, so here you just see me mix until you get that real crumbly, fine crumbly texture. And this might take a little while. Anyways, try to take off all the excess shortening. I washed my hands out. The next step will be to do water. So you want to get 2 cups of water and go ahead and microwave that for about 1.5 minutes or so, just to get it pretty, warm. Either you can use warm or hot, depending on what your hands could take, because we're fixing to mix it with our hands, and you don't want it too hot because then it's going to be hard to mix it with your hand. It'll burn your fingers. So what I do is I like to gather up in a pile, and then I like to make a little hole in the middle of the pile. So Just waiting for that water to be ready. Okay, so then I make a little hole in the middle, and that's where I like to dump some of my water. Now it's important that we start off a little bit at a time. So I just put a little bit of water and start kind of mixing up my dough, not my dough, sorry, my flour, so that it can become a little bit doughy-like texture. And then when I see that it needs a little bit more water, I'm like, okay, dump a little bit more water. I actually, I accidentally made it a little bit too hot, so my fingers are actually really burning right now as I'm doing this. And so I'm making sure that I'm mixing it carefully, because my water is actually pretty hot. So just make it warm so that your fingers are able to handle it when you're mixing it. So as you can see, I'm just doing a little bit at a time, because then I don't want to add extra flour, because you don't want your dough to be real sticky, because once it's sticky, you put a little bit too much water, which is still okay, because even if it is a little bit sticky, you could just add a little bit more flour and mix it up, because you wanted a nice smooth soft consistency. And so as you can see, I found that consistency here, and so now I'm just kneading it really well to combine everything. So you want it to be really soft and smooth, your dough. So I'm just kneading and kneading. It's very important to knead it, just so that everything's mixed and you got your air pockets out and everything. Then I just like to roll it up in a ball, and then the next thing I'm going to do is get it into plastic bag. Now once we have it in the plastic bag, we want to leave it there for a good 30 minutes. You can leave it there for 15 minutes. You just want to make sure that it gets a little bit bigger, like it rises your dough, because the longer you have it waiting in the plastic bag, the better your tortillas will come out. So here I have already waited a good 30 minutes to an hour, just because I like mine to be really well, when I take it out and when I begin the process of making it, I like mine to sit out for a while. So here I'm just getting a little bit at a time and rolling it up into a small ball. About that size is good. Now your sizes will depend on if you want a really big tortilla or if you want a small tortilla. So as you can see here, I kind of have them like small but not too big, because I just want mine like regular sized, I guess. Now if you're like wanting to make little mini tacos or something, you'd want to roll them smaller. Now if you're trying to make like a burrito size tortilla, obviously you'd want more dough rolled up in a ball. So here I'm just taking up all the balls. So I'm going to do that for all of my dough and just set them back in the bag so they do not dry out. Okay, so here we are finishing up our last couple balls of dough. And now I have all of my dough in this plastic HEB bag. As you can see, there are a lot of tortillas that can be made in here. I think it's about 16 or so. And so I'm only going to do a couple, and if you actually don't want to do them right at that second, you could just tie them up and store them in the fridge. So I'm actually going to do about 4 just to show y'all right now, and the rest I'm going to store them in the fridge. So just make sure you tie up your bag really well so they don't dry out. So I'm taking up all the air out and tying it a good knot, and then storing up in the fridge, and when I want to do some again, either tomorrow or the next day, I just pull it out and they're ready to go. So yeah, just make sure they're really tight in the bag so that they don't dry out. Now I want to get a wooden roller. You can have any type of roller. It does not have to be a wooden roller. I've seen rollers that are plastic. So plastic one will work too, but I like wood, so I got this one. The next thing I like to do is sprinkle some flour on the counter so that I can really work well with my tortillas when I'm rolling them out. Also, I really like rubbing some of it on my roller as well, just so that my tortilla doesn't stick as much on my roller. Now you need to set your tortilla on the counter and just kind of start rolling back and forth. Now I must say this is probably the trickiest part of making tortillas, is trying to get your tortillas to be nice and round. When I first started making tortillas, they were looking like maps, all of the countries, like just, it was ridiculous. It was just, I mean, it was nowhere near a circle. Obviously, even now, you can see it's not a perfectly nice circle. I feel like this is an art, and it's going to take a while. Look, I'm already messing up to master. My grandma has actually been doing tortillas like since she was like 15. She's like 70 something now. And let me tell you, I feel like it's going to take that long for me to master it, because her tortillas are a perfect circle every single time. So don't worry if when you're doing it, it's not a perfect circle, as long as you're rolling it out nice and thin. So you want it to look translucent. If you do it too thick, your tortilla is going to be thick. I mean, if you like it really thick, that's fine, but I really like mine kind of thinned out. Something else I forgot to mention, before you actually start rolling them out, make sure you get a some kind of skillet or something to heat up prior to putting your tortilla, because you want your skillet to be able to get nice and hot and ready. So when you are finished rolling your tortilla, it's ready to go on there. I put mine at, I think I'm fixing to show y'all here. I put mine, or I'm just zooming in, okay, at medium. And so that right now it's already hot and it's good to go before I actually start rolling it out, because it obviously takes time to heat up. So as you can see, it's starting to kind of bubble up, have some bubbles, so that's a good sign. And I think I put mine at medium heat. Another good sign that your tortillas are coming out good is that they start rising and they get some air in there. Okay, so I'm just gonna set the camera down here real quick so that you can see me, and you can see the tortilla and its process of cooking. So you just want to leave it there, and what I like to do is kind of flip it over and kind of see if it's cooking from the bottom. If it's not, just leave it on for a little bit longer. But here I already flipped it, and the other side is nice and brown, little spots on it, and that's how you know it's doing its job cooking. And so that's pretty much it for the video. You just do this for all your tortillas and you're basically done. Thank you so much for watching, and please subscribe below or leave some comments. Thank you. Bye bye.